Entering basic info for construction stormwater general permit applications. The first section that needs to be completed in any application is the basic info section. In this section, you'll input applicant information, facility or site information, and stormwater discharge information. You'll enter the applicant name, keeping in mind that the name used must be a legal active name registered with the Oregon Department of Commerce Corporation Division. And in the facility or construction location section, you'll select or create your facility. If your facility or site currently has or had a permit with DEQ in the past, the facility should be in the system and you'll select it from the drop-down menu. If your facility or site has never had a permit with DEQ, you'll go through a series of steps to create a new facility in the system. The next step will be to input information for the legal and invoice contacts. The legal contact for your facility is the person who's legally authorized to sign NPDES permit applications, DMRs, notices of termination, and other reports required by the permit. The legal contact will be a person with a responsible official account in YDO. The invoice contact will be the person or legal entity responsible for payment of the annual fee invoice and must be or be part of the same company as the applicant. Next, you'll add information for the architect or consulting engineer who designed the erosion and sediment control plan and dewatering plan, if applicable. And you'll enter the information for the inspector who performed the erosion and sediment control visual monitoring. If you have questions about who this inspector is, refer to the 1200C Stormwater General Permit. The last information you'll need to input under Basic Info is the stormwater discharge information. A few things to keep in mind. The receiving water for your facility or site will be the first water body receiving stormwater from the site. This could be a lake, stream, river, wetland, or other water body, and may or may not be located adjacent to the site. You'll need to indicate whether your receiving water is listed on the 303D list as impaired for turbidity or sedimentation, and if so, whether there's a TMDL established. You'll also need to indicate if your site has been assigned an Environmental Cleanup Site Information, or ECSI number. If you're not sure what this number is, you can refer to the instruction file we discussed downloading when starting the application. So let's jump over to the test site and go through all of this together. So here I am. I'm logged in as the RO again. This is my dashboard. And I want to show you for a second what it looks like for the RO when a consultant is working on an application. So I'll go to Resume Edits, and I can see this 1200C general permit application that my consultant started. And I can click the edit icon and see the information that was input by the consultant. I'm going to go ahead and start a new application for a facility that doesn't and hasn't previously had a permit with DEQ, so that way you guys can see what it looks like to add a new facility. So on the new submittals page, I'm going to go to the Apply for 1200C NPDES General Permit option. I'm going to click the Add icon. I'm going to enter the applicant name. And as a reminder, the applicant name must be a legal active name registered with the Oregon Department of Commerce Corporation Division. If you need information, you can access it via this link. So we briefly saw the consultant selected a facility. If you were selecting your facility, again, you would collect this radio dial and you would select an existing facility from this drop-down list. However, if you're applying for a facility or site without a current permit that has never previously had a permit, the facility won't be in the drop-down list, so you'll have to create a new facility. So click the Create New Facility radio dial, enter the facility name or the site name, and then fill out the required information, including the email, and phone number. The next section is the mailing address. You'll use these radio dials to select whether or not your address, or whether your address is in the United States or Canada. And then you'll enter the mailing address, and city. And you'll see that the state is automatically assumed to be Oregon. If you need to change that, you can use this menu. And the zip code. And then the next part is going to be choosing the physical location of the facility or site. Again, you'll use the radio dials to indicate if your facility is in the United States or Canada. Then you'll enter the physical location of the site. You'll add the city. And you can see that as soon as I started putting in the address, the latitude and longitude were automatically populated, and a Google map was created for the location of the facility. Again, the state is automatically assumed to be Oregon. If you need to change that, use this menu. The next step is to input the legal contact information. So you'll include the name of the legal contact, who's likely the person with the RO account for this facility. You'll enter the company, if applicable, then the title of the legal contact, enter the email address, and the phone number. And you can tell that this is the required information because the text fields are red and they have the required note underneath them. And you'll use these radio dials to select if the legal contact's address is in the United States or Canada, and then you'll enter the legal contact address. City, and zip code. and you'll input the information for the invoice contact. If the invoice contact is the same as the legal contact, you can select this checkbox here, and it will automatically fill in the fields with the information that you populated for the legal contact section. The next step is entering the engineering and architect firm information. So you'll include the name of the engineering or architect firm that completed the erosion and sediment control plan. And you'll enter the name of the project manager. And you'll enter the firm contact information, the phone number and email. And the next step will be to include the project erosion and sediment control inspector information. So you'll include the inspector's name, the inspector's company, and then the contact information, so the phone number and the email address for the inspector. Then you'll use these radio dials to indicate yes or no whether the project will disturb 5 or more acres. For our example application, our project will disturb 5 or more acres. And then inspections have to be conducted by a person certified in one of DEQ's approved certification programs. So you'll select the appropriate certification from the drop-down menu, and then you'll provide the necessary information. For our example, our inspector is a certified professional in erosion and sediment control, and I'll enter the certification number. And I will indicate the expiration date of that certification by using this calendar. If I click up here where it says October 2021, I can get a list of years and months. So I'm going to select January 2025, January 1st, 2025 as the certification expiration date. I'll enter the name of the project, the county where the project is taking place. I select that from the drop-down menu here. And then I have to select the SIC and NAICS codes associated with the facility or site. I can select the SIC code from this drop-down menu. I'm going to choose single family. And then for the NAICS code, there's significantly more choices for the construction permit, so I will use the search field. And I can either search by name or code. So I just used a keyword, and then I selected it by clicking on it. Select the facility type description. This is a privately owned facility. And I use these calendar icons again to select the approximate desired start date and estimated construction completion date for the project. So our project is going to get started November 1st, 2021. And I estimate that it will be completed by December 31st, 2023. And then this last section, actually it's the last couple of sections. This section is about project size, and then the last section is going to be about the stormwater discharge information. So to select the project size, you can use these arrows, but it does only go up in whole numbers. So you can also just type in your information into the box. Total site acreage is 7.5 acres. Our total disturbed acreage is also 7.5 acres. And the total number of lots is going to be 35 lots. And then I'll answer whether or not there's soil or groundwater contamination located within the site boundary. In our example, there's not. I'll answer using the radio dials. Is a water of the state within the project site or within 50 feet of the project boundary? No. And will you be dewatering during construction? No. There's also fields for your depth to groundwater information and data source. And then this last section is the stormwater discharge information. So you'll want to select your receiving water by clicking on this Add New button and entering the receiving water name here into this text field. And then I'll enter the coordinates of the discharge point. Enter the latitude and longitude. Again, you have these arrows where you can like add the numbers, but they only go up in whole numbers, and it seems like it would take a long time to get to 120. So I'm going to type in the number here. And then I use these radio dials to select the nature of the discharge. So if it's a direct discharge to water of the state, you would select this radio dial. If the discharge is through a municipal storm, sewer, or drainage system and then to a water of a state, you would select this radio dial. If the discharge is through a ditch or conveyance, then to a water of the state, you would select this radio dial. And if the discharge is through an irrigation channel or ditch owned and operated by an irrigation district, you would select this radio dial. I'm going to say that we discharge through a ditch or other conveyance, then to a water of the state. So, mentioned this in the slides, you're going to have to indicate whether or not stormwater runoff during construction discharges directly to or through a storm sewer or drainage system that discharges to a water body with a TMDL or 303D listing for turbidity or sedimentation. And if you need to figure out whether or not that's the case, you can click on this icon here and it'll give you a website that you can go to look up DEQ assessment database information. For our example permit, we do not. You can click this box if there's an operation and maintenance plan for active treatment systems, and then indicate whether or not an ECSI number has been assigned by DEQ. And if you need information on this aspect, you can refer to the application instructions. For our purposes, we are going to say no, and then we are going to save the basic information that we entered. One thing that I didn't show you is that if your facility has more than one receiving water, you can add another one just by following the same procedure. Just click the Add New button, and you can see that there's a second option for you to input a second receiving water information. So once we've input the basic information, the next step is going to be attachments. But I'm going to go through this whole process for the 1200Z permit application as well.